Hey, y'all. Hey, we are talking tarot in the High Vibe Zone. Have you heard of tarot as a leadership development tool? Well, if you haven't, you are in for an amazing conversation. Get that chat comment box ready because we are taking the conversation around talking about tarot in the High Vibe Zone. It's going to be awesome, y'all. You are a spiritual being in physical form, a dichotomy of light and dark, where energy equals mass on a journey designed to fulfill our personal legend and purpose, to use humanity throughout, to amplify and transcend, slay the ego, raise the humanity. That's the signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the High Vibe Zone. Okay, I'm super excited to bring back both of these amazing guests. One more recent than the other, but nevertheless, still very awesome. I'm here to introduce my tag team co-partner in this conversation, Maria Vargas.
Hello.
Hello. And what this is all about, this amazing human, Alyssa.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. And in true High Vibe fashion, LinkedIn, YouTube, whether you're watching the live or the replay, drop in the comments where you're joining us from and what are you grateful for? Gratitude changes the attitude, and we are going to be going high vibe in this conversation for sure. I'm so excited for this. Okay. So, Alyssa, you have been on the High Vibe Zone. It's been a while. It was with all.
It's been a while. Yeah.
Welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
We're talking tarot today.
Yeah.
How's that flow?
Good. I mean, I love bringing tarot into the conversation and expanding what it could mean for individuals outside of just a personal spiritual practice or maybe the simple stereotypical understandings that you might have, what tarot can do as a tool in one's personal life, but also professional life, knows no bounds. So we'll explore that today.
I love it. What do you think, Maria?
Background story. When I first started working with you at Culture Circle, one of the first things you said was, I know someone who can give you a business tarot. And I was like, so confused at first. I was like, what do you mean? I was like, I've never done tarot before. And now I don't understand what business tarot means. And now for the past 2 years, my favorite way to kick off a new year is by doing tarot, especially business tarot, just because we'll dive deeper into the conversation, but it can be really used as a tool for us to self-reflect and kind of create priorities for ourselves in terms of our career or just our professional life in general.
I love that story. And yes, you're right. Everyone on the Culture Circle Tribe has met with you, Alyssa. More than once. And yes, I agree. Tarot is a tool. Can be utilized. But let's take a step back. And what is tarot?
Good question. At its simplest, it's important to understand tarot as a set of 78 cards that follow a symbolic system. So what that means is that each card is designed, and I'm just going to give you guys some of those visual aids, with what might be considered collective archetypal imagery and symbolism that's meant to evoke different experiences in our life. So it spans challenges that we have, areas of relationship, emotions, conflicts, really expressions of both the potentials in our life, but also those difficult growth areas. So as this sort of comprehensive system of reflections of life experiences, you might say. The tarot really works as a mirror back to us of our inner experiences, and it helps us look at outer experiences from new points of view. So very simply, a card deck, 78 cards full of imagery, titles, but at its depth, it's a symbolic system.
You sound like you have a lot of experience with tarot.
just a little bit.
How long have you been doing this?
I've been working with tarot for about 8 years now, I'd say, and it started out in a very casual way, just with friends drawing cards. I got a reading as a teenager, and that definitely sparked some interest for me, but I found that using the cards in a really lighthearted way within a group of people really ignited a lot of interesting conversation and seemed to strike into the heart of some situations that we were considering. And that really piqued my interest. And so from there, I just began studying it more, using it, and have gone on to incorporate it into my coaching practice, to offer it to business leaders, but also to teach it as well.
Y'all, I'm trying to figure out this layout. It's not cooperating in the way that I want it to. I'm trying to get it to where it highlights you, Alyssa, as you're talking, and especially with the visual tool. So I just, bear with me, but that 8 years.
Yeah.
It's a good amount of time.
It's a good amount of time. And I would say that what's interesting, because these cards are symbolic in nature, is that you keep learning with them. They don't have just like one static meaning, but rather they sort of like circumambulate like certain ideas. Each card has a lot of nuance. And so the more that you deepen your practice with the cards, the more that they reveal, and they kind of shift and change, and that keeps the practice very interesting.
Alyssa, one of the things that I've learned the most being around you and learning a little bit more about tarot is kind of debunking the myths around it first.
Sure, yeah.
Would you want to share some of the misconceptions around tarot, and then like the future compared to what it actually is?
Sure. The cards are used in a lot of different ways, and I think that most stereotypical idea is like the fortune teller at the table with the cards out and them being used to predict likely outcomes, asking questions like, when will I get married? Or am I going to get this job? And my opinion is that the cards should be used in a present focus, or if anything, if it's future focused, more towards building your awareness of things to focus on for the future. So that instead of the cards dictating a likely future because you've pulled one at random, you're instead empowering yourself to gain more clarity about your own inner dynamics or understand things in the outer environment more. And in that way, you can plan better for the future. If you use the cards to predict the future, I don't think it's something that can be relied upon. And I think it really draws power and autonomy away from the individual. But I will say that as a set of focusing and meditative cards, they can really hone an individual's intuition so that in a way you start to see patterns that aren't usually very clear. And the kind of insights that can come through seem almost clairvoyant in nature. So there is like a mystery and a sort of magic to them, right? But it's what it unlocks inside of you and how that opens up that channel that might usually be kind of blocked up. So if you allow yourself to really build a relationship with them, you can sense those things inside of yourself better. And I guarantee you, you will probably have these sort of uncanny experiences, but it still is grounded in your own empowerment.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Trace.
Go ahead.
What are some things that you think people who haven't heard about tarot specifically, or who maybe have heard about it for like personal reasons, how it translates into business practices, like for someone who's an executive or even just a mentor or leading a team?
Yeah, what is fantastic about the tarot is that it can really morph to any experience. So whether you're looking at a personal relationship or a business endeavor or a new project you want to get off the ground. It's all about you, the individual, and your experiences, and the cards can tap into that. So they're universal in nature, and they don't need to just be filtered into this certain area of life. But a lot of people who come to do business tarot, I think, are skeptical and a bit uncertain of how it applies. And what I think is most important for individuals to do if they're going to come to a session with me or use their own cards in this way is to get really clear on their intention and goals of using the cards so that you shape your intention around what your needs are. And in this case, maybe it's a leader who wants to focus on how to align on a project that they're beginning. And maybe they need to look at certain challenges that they constantly run into, or where there's opportunity for growth, or how to maybe align with a teammate better. So when you have that clear intention, when you have that prompt and you draw a card, it can apply directly into that situation. So for me, a prerequisite of having a session is reflecting and thinking about what your goals are and what you want to focus on. And that really sharpens that arrow where our focus goes with the cards. And we can pull out a lot of insight or illuminate a lot of things that have been hidden through the cards. And that helps a leader just feel more prepared for challenges they're facing or new opportunities or transitions in their work, etc.
I have one more emoji to put up.
And
because I have seen what you're talking about personally, I've experienced that. And I've also heard on the other end from leaders that have partaken in this business tarot experience. I recall one leader was like, I thought I was going to write a book, but actually I've changed my consulting practice and it's a lot more fulfilling. And it's like, these are things that often get overlooked in business. And I love how I love your approach and how using tarot as a tool really helps navigate leaders to connect. Not only, I sense it's like connecting with the higher self of their leadership and gaining clarity on which directions to go. And like you mentioned, that empowerment piece of a leader is really key, because when the leaders aren't empowered, it's very challenging for them to empower anyone else that's under or within proximity of their leadership. I want to give a shout out to Vanda. Hello. Thank you for joining us. Vanda's, fun fact, the first person that I know, that I knowingly know, lives in Nova Scotia, which I've always heard of Nova Scotia. And then I met Vanda and I'm like, you live there? That's so cool. Vanda is awesome.
Great.
And seems like you have experience with the tarot as well, Vanda. Any questions you want to drop in the comments as well that we can answer, please do. I'd like to kind of extend a little bit more off of Maria's question when it comes to the business tarot, and wondering, like, have you, first of all, how did that conceptualize where you're like, okay, I've been doing tarot for this long? Because when we spoke, you said to me business tarot, and I was like, what? I have never heard of that in my life. So at what point did that like make sense to you? Like tarot, using it in kind of everyday life, but in specifics for business and leaders.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through that, please?
Yeah, it came from, I would guess, like a merging of my two worlds, which is my background in business and then starting a tarot practice where I was reading on the side. And a client that I had invited me to teach a tarot course for his company. And I started to strategize how to shift some of that teaching around the business area and sort of trying to merge those two realms. And what was born out of that class was how to really ground this practice and the system in a way that was approachable to people who had no idea what tarot was or maybe felt a little apprehensive about it, and to also show them how it can be used for personal development, self-reflection, meditation, all of those things, but how they could also take it into their workspace and use it as a supportive tool. And it was really successful. People found the process just really powerful and insightful. And that's really what tarot does. It tends to really knock people off their feet with what comes up. And from there, I just sort of built this idea around offering tarot for professionals or for leaders or in the business space so that we could hone in the use of the cards for this area that isn't always looked at typically.
I think something that's interesting is, at first, I think I tended to think about tarot as sort of a beacon in the dark night, like something where you could focus on. And then now what comes up is actually sort of the opposite. I think we're pulled in so many directions, especially at work and also our personal lives, because they're both intertwined. But I think the tarot really helps you hone in on that one thing you can actually work on in a world full of distractions and things that are pulling you away. So what I find helpful is sort of just maybe that card or that theme is that main focus theme for this period of time in my work life and personal life. And it's something that you can always go back to and remember to keep focused. So I think that's what I've found most helpful.
Yeah, I think for people who struggle with having too much on their plate, tarot can work to sort of limit that funnel and bring in a focus point. And on the flip side, I think for someone who maybe feels that they don't even know where to start or they have like no options, the tarot can point you in a direction to start moving you. And so it's just extremely adaptable. It's adaptable to where you're at in your life and what's going on, and you can approach it from all of these different angles, which makes it such a holistic tool. And in that way, each person's reading can be so different, and meet them where they are, service those needs, and you can come back a month later and try to come in it from a totally different point of view because you've changed and life has changed, and the cards will be able to support you through that too.
I love that. And we have a question from
Yay.
Here we go. Will tarot automatically morph based on the environment it is used in, or are you the one who is guiding the conversation to suit the environment?
Interesting question. I think it really depends on how you view the use of the cards. But when I consider what this question is about the environment that it's being used in, I think that the way that you approach the cards, and that's not just where you are personally, but like how you're reading the space that you're in, the people that you're around can really shift things too, because it's about the connection between you and the cards and the individual that you're reading for, and all of those factors come into play. And that's why for me, it's like I need my area to be really honed in, focused, quiet. I need to kind of get into that flow state for me to really be able to create those connections and read the narratives in the cards. And I've done that sometimes in a party environment with friends, and it's like a totally different vibe than doing like a one-on-one reading. So, you ultimately are like the vessel through which the cards are speaking. So the environment can shift and change you, and it can shift how you're even looking at the cards, because you just don't know how something in your environment might affect you, or some insight you might pick up on. But I ultimately like to hone in and focus in on your experience as the reader and how you're connecting with the cards and with the person that you're reading for. So I hope that's helpful. Hope that answers the question.
Sounds like it did. Very nice. It kind of pairs with this. I'm so glad that Vanda asked this, because I'm curious if you could walk us through what a business tarot session is like. I mean, I'm sure Marie and I can add our individual experiences, But if someone listening now is curious about business tarot, what would you say the session is like, and how does it go?
Mm-hmm.
How does it work?
Yeah, I would say that it's one part deep inner discussion with an individual, but another part practical coaching and tool creating and structuring. So it's trying to get into both a realm of practical work while also stepping into that kind of non-rational space of intuition and symbolism and metaphor. And so straddling those two realms means that I engage the person I'm working with a lot of questions about where they're at in their life, what their goals are, what are the dynamics of what they want to talk about. So it's like, I'm not necessarily trying to read your mind about what you want to talk about. Like, let's set the stage here. Let's create a container where we're really grounded in what means most to you at this moment. And then I bring in a lot of those coaching tools and development tools to ask difficult but ultimately constructive questions around what I'm sensing from the cards and what I'm picking up from the conversation. So it's really a bridging between coaching work and what is very typical of tarot, which is more of this intuitive experience of subtlety and the way that images and metaphor speak to us. And so I think people feel like they're in a really dynamic experience when they do a tarot session with me. I'll draw cards at random. I will kind of relate them to the specific intentions or goals that you've come with. But as I relate and sort of talk about the connections that I'm seeing and what insights come from that, I'll also often turn those insights into questions. And it might be anything from, well, what do you see in the card? Or when you look at this image, like, what does it bring up for you? Um, or I might say, like, how might you work with this theme that's come up in the card? How might you practically integrate this into your life? And that's where a lot of the supporting coaching work comes into. So it's meant to be an experience that really gets you into your inner experiences and allows you to not just have to think so rationally, but then we take it out of that space and ground it into the practical. And so it's really a mixing of realms that I think is ultimately what's so interesting about the experience.
Sounds about right to me. What do you think, Maria?
Yes, and that's a great segue into someone else posted a question.
Go ahead.
Are we both the
No.
same? Hi Kanisha. So never knew tarot had a business genre. I have never had a tarot reading. How does one apply what the cards are speaking? So I guess this question does relate to how do we apply something that can potentially be an abstract concept like tarot into business practice.
Yeah, that's a really great question. What is really fun and interesting about the cards, as I mentioned, they're so flexible and they can kind of nestle into all these different areas of life, is that when you draw a card and you might be struggling to connect it to something more in the business realm, I would say, like, ground it in the human experience, because the human is present whether they're in the office or whether that they're at home or whether they're in a fight with their partner, talking to their mom, whatever it might be, the human is present. So if you draw a card that focuses in on areas of tension in a relationship, how do you apply that to a business dynamic? Might be, a conflict that you're having with your boss, and why is that coming up for you? And how might you approach it with a little bit more openness or some more uh, courage to speak a truth in a situation that you don't want to? Like, it's just encouraging you to get back to the place where you can connect that insight to your experience. And that can apply to the business space in so many ways. And if the cards do seem a little bit abstract, I I think it's about understanding what that abstract theme really applies to in a general sense, and then looking for it in what might be a more business focused area, like, just to make sense of this. So, like, the Empress I'm drawing here and showing is a card of often creativity and the principle more of receptivity and connection and relation. And so, if you drew this card in a business tarot session, it might seem sort of abstract, or how do I really apply that to this situation? But maybe it's challenging you to approach a situation at work with this sense of more grounded relating, when maybe you have more fear around getting into that emotional space with a coworker. Maybe it's a little bit of that real vulnerability or openness that might create a connection, which the Empress is really about, the dynamics of relationship and what is born between that creative principle. Or maybe you relate to it through more of her sense of grounded creativity and tapping into your own like generative possibilities of building out a work project that you've been feeling maybe a little bit of fear around. So you just take that broad idea of maybe relating or creativity, and you start to try to find these pathways into your situation. And that's why having that grounded intention as you go into drawing the cards is so important, because that creates the structure and framework of how you're going to relate the cards to the situation, and it really sets you up to get the most advice out of the cards as you can.
I'm looking for it. There it is.
Fire. I you brought out some great themes in terms of what people can probably expect. You mentioned creativity, I think wisdom, shadow. Yeah. So what are some of these concepts that are examples of what sort of comes up in the cards that people can use?
Yeah, there's a lot, I think, about feeling like you're in transition that a lot of people come to tarot for, where you're feeling a little bit ungrounded, not really sure where to focus, looking towards the future and wanting to really prepare for it as best that you can. Challenging yourself to really see the unseen, or what am I not taking care of, or what am I denying in myself? Ways that the cards can point to different areas for you to focus that you wouldn't immediately jump to. Looking for support in developing new ideas or connecting to some sort of new potential in your life. So really, I feel like anything's pretty fair game when it comes to tarot, but you can expect to be challenged, you can expect to be supported, and you can expect to be guided through the situation, so that you're leaving it not necessarily with information that I think always feels revolutionary or totally paradigm shifting. Like, I think the most feedback I hear about the tarot readings is that the cards told me in some ways what I already knew, but that I didn't want to admit to myself, or something I had been sort of sensing for a while but was struggling to get to, or it helped me affirm an aspect, or it really pointed to something that I wasn't aware of. So it's trying to draw out inner parts of you that need attention. And in that way, it really supports you, can challenge you, can feel like a difficult, but ultimately a really grounding experience that empowers you to make decisions and feel supported.
I'm just going to keep using the fire emoji because it's what you're saying is very spot on. And what we've seen with our client partners, specifically around the leadership level and the CEOs, and even actually every title within an organization, from our client partners, we do send them to business tarot. And if they are comfortable with engaging, they go through the experience. And you're right around the feedback. It's like, I can speak for myself in terms of whenever I've done, so I do, just so y'all know, I do quarterly or seasonally with Alyssa, because that seems to be the pattern of when things shift and change for me. And I know at least the last one I did was like, yeah, I've been trying to avoid this for a while. And it was like, I don't know if you felt it, Alyssa, but I was like, not trying to go there at all. And then finally I just like went there, and I will tell you everything. I don't think we would be on the trajectory. I would be on the trajectory had I not gone through that experience. Again, that word challenge is such a big, I think you just summed it up beautifully. So I'm forever grateful for you, but also the fact that you do this for other humans. Like, it's not just my experience. You do this. appears to be seamlessly for every single person that has come across you for business tarot. So I just think it's such a gift of what I know it's such a gift that you have. And I would gauge that as we're moving to the future of work in it and navigating it, it is humanity and humanity tapping into those parts and shadow selves and like really diving into how we're showing up as individuals. Which kind of brings me to this question is, why do you think tarot has become so popular in the recent years?
Yeah, it seems to have really caught the imagination and interest of so many people. When I started studying about 8 years ago, I would say I didn't really know anyone else who was interested. I didn't see it being talked about a lot, but it has come back into the fold of the culture, I think, in a way that it sort of speaks to just like a need that people need accessibility in terms of practices that feel supportive spiritually, that can ground them in the practical, that are concrete, yet at the same time, like enriching deeply to the soul. And I think that's what's so fascinating about tarot is that it's has this uncanny way of igniting those spiritual cores inside of us, yet it doesn't stay in that space. Like it doesn't stay in the ethereal realm. You can take this theme and apply it to your life. And in that way, it becomes like a guidebook or a supporting hand in your inner journey. And that is a powerful tool for anyone to be able to hone and have themselves so that they don't necessarily have to with other people. So I think it has come forward to really support a need for individuals to just have that spiritual and practical support in their life. And I think it's really expanded what not only tarot is, how we define it in our culture, but in some ways it's returned it back to its old roots, which come from really the early practices of many spiritual communities who built tarot decks and used them as meditative tools. They use them as tools of gaining insight and wisdom and knowledge. And also, the tarot has history being used in societies and even as playing card games. So it brings people together, it fosters community, and it builds self awareness. And I think that that's just a beautiful gift for the collective right now.
I love how it's something that's really tied down with human history, and here we are, 2022, and still talking about it and still finding a lot of excellent uses for it. And it is a great tool for personal reasons, for leadership development reasons. Do we want to pull a card, or what were we thinking?
I think that would be a beautiful way to wrap this up. And while you're feeling for the card, what we'd love to do is the business tarot is one tool as it associates with leadership development. And so if you're interested in taking this journey, we'd love to put a link in the comments after this and where you can connect with Alyssa. We are she's doing business tarot. We're still in January, so we are offering a business tarot special for January to get started. And you know, baby Mikey, to get started. And so we would add that in there. But anything else you would add in terms of, someone looking to get started in business tarot, or what would you, I mean, you've said so many great things, like I could just extract some of those nuggets, but what would you say to encourage someone that's like, I don't know, I'm kind of, yes, I do need this direction, I'm looking for something different. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I guess I would say that if you're teetering on that edge and there's a bit of that uncertainty, you're at a really interesting threshold that often comes when there's something that wants to move inside of you, which is like there is a drive, something that's trying to pull you forward. And at the same time, there's a bit of like a resistance inwardly because change is hard and scary and uncertain. So I think if you're noticing that, lean into it, trust the feeling that's coming up. It's different to say, it's just not the right time. My schedule is really busy. I'll do this next month. But it's another thing to say, I feel something calling me to it, but I'm just not sure. And I think when you stand on that threshold and you allow yourself to walk through, that's when really interesting things start to happen. That's where expansion is, that's where creativity is, that's where the challenge is that's going to help you grow. So the tarot is a perfect tool to meet you at that place and help guide you into those next steps. And um, the experience, I think, more than anything, is really fun and enjoyable. Like we have a really good time in the sessions, and it's connective. It's connective to you, and it's connective to all these areas in your life. And I think it's worth experiencing at least once to see how it might shift, change, or impact you. And usually, when someone does it one time, they want to come back again. And I think that just speaks to how powerful the experience can be, but also how useful it is. So I hope to see you at a future session.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So let us close out with a card.
Yeah. I'm drawing a card, and in this way, it's a general explanation of how this could apply, for anyone really watching this in this moment. And I drew the card Strength. And strength is what we call a major arcana, which speaks to major life experiences and allows us to kind of tap into a greater part of ourself that can really influence the environment to enrich where we're at. And strength is really a card of resiliency and fortitude, and often comes up in a reading to remind us our ability to weather difficult storms, to confront fears and uncertainty, but to also find a lot of softness in ourselves, patience, grace. The card is named Strength, but the imagery, which is so important to pay attention to when you do tarot, is the imagery and the symbolism shows a woman who is gentling a lion with her hands. And so it's a very soft and receptive type of power that is in Strength. So it's about meeting difficult parts of ourself or difficult aspects in our environment, not with the need to control it or force it or to power through it, but more to come into relationship with it. And that you're able to kind of move through these difficult times by finding how you navigate through in this more flexible way. And so, like the individual on the card, there's this kind of deep inner well of potential strength inside of oneself to deal with the situation. And if you would take that practically, it would say, don't bash your head into the situation, but rather find a soft way to come into relationship and influence it to where you need it to go. So, couple of insights from the strength card. Hope that brings some sort of clarity or interest for anyone watching.
I'm looking at you, Maria.
I was just going to say one final thought from me is, I think, and from what Alyssa just demonstrated, which thank you for sharing that, it's these cards don't give us any answers to the questions that we ask ourselves all the time, but I think they do demonstrate that we have the wisdom and knowledge already within us to answer these questions, and that we intuitively know which direction is right for us. But they serve as kind of like a gentle reminder that this is maybe the direction you should explore, or that you should try and do this, whatever the card brings. But it is something that, like, it is sort of up to you how you relate it to your life, and the answers are already within, sort of.
Yeah. The cards often bring up more questions, but they're questions that I think lead to reflection that feels actually expansive rather than furthering your confusion. And if that doesn't make sense, I guarantee if you have a session, you'll come to understand. And then you get to sit and reflect on that and really come to some tangible steps forwards that you can make. So the cards are really there to be your companion. Tarot is a tool, right? So it's just about picking them up and trusting in the process.
I love that. Tarot as a tool, absolutely.
Mhm.
I want to thank Maria for being here as a co-host, and Alyssa, thank you so much for
You're
just
welcome.
you
Thank you.
and your gift, and some other thank yous here from our awesome vibers. Ooh, can we call people vibers? Like, if they're in the high vibe zone, can y'all be vibers? Like, you vibing, right? Like, this is great. I don't know, right?
I like it.
Yeah. I want to thank you all for joining us live, watching the replay. Again, we are going to drop a link on how you can spend time with Alyssa on the Business Tarot. We're running a January 2022 special in terms of how you can invest in yourself and how that flows into leadership development. So I want to thank you all for being here. Any final words? I don't know.
Thank you, Sharice. Thanks for having me.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Maria. It's always lovely to chat with you both, and I look forward to possibly meeting with individuals for Business Tarot.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you all for being here in the High Vibe Zone. We're going to kick it to our intro, outro. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Light, love, and gratitude. Thank you for being with us today.
You are a spiritual being in physical form, a dichotomy of light and dark, where energy equals mass on a journey designed to fulfill our personal legend and purpose, to use humanity throughout to amplify and transcend, slay the ego, raise the humanity. That's the signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the High Vibe Zone.